So would love to see what kinds of questions you guys have, and we will know how long to kind of allot based on the questions. So who has a question? Drop them in. Really looking forward to providing solutions. Todd, kind of, I'd like to start a little bit with if we're launching, I just heard my LinkedIn pop. I'm going to silence that. If we're launching something, what are some like basics we need to really make sure that we're ready?
I mean, the niche conversation is always a good one to have, talking about, testing and pivoting. It's also really funny. I was talking to someone today about it and they're like, oh, I need a super nice website. I'm going to spend, 3,000. And I was like, there's no point in spending that until you know that you're in the right niche, So I had a longer conversation about, kind of what I would call like this tall to ride the ride, like just getting the basics in place that you can start testing and you can start doing outreach and you can start, see where you're getting traction. And then, yeah, like once it looks like it's flowing and you're getting job orders and on the back end, you're able to fill them. Cause that's another one. It's like, you can get a job order, but like, if it's just everyone's a purple squirrel, then, it's just going to cost so much as far as like time for ROI.
Mm-hmm.
So it is honestly getting people to do less in some ways because they'll come in and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm like, whoa, we just got to get down to like, the very basics of, the LinkedIn profile and the, website, both being in alignment. And then, testing for email deliverability and making sure that we're not landing in the spam folder with our initial outreach.
Right.
And then testing before you really invest a lot of money into it.
Yeah. So I know we had some new folks join. Please drop your questions into the chat, or if you're comfortable, feel free to unmute yourself. You're welcome to come on video too. If you're not comfortable with that, no problem. So I really like what you were saying there, and we've got a great question from Steve. So I'm going to go ahead and ask that too. But I think that there's something really key about like making sure there's flow between like your email, your LinkedIn profile, because like even just this past week, we landed a deal just based off your LinkedIn.
Yeah, and it's funny that like the basic outreach still works,
Mm-hmm.
So I had the talent acquisition manager of a SaaS company just, pick up the phone and call me. And I haven't looked at the company and it just, our VA, went through, did the normal thing. But that's just, that's more building on the brand. That's why I kind of say, you need like a 1% response rate so that if it's worth investing in it, building out direct mail, handwritten letters, podcasts, videos, like all of the other tools, nicer looking website. There's no point in doing that though, unless you know that there's going to be traction there. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think that that's really valuable, the importance of testing. So Steve asks, working in manufacturing, engineering, and ops, suggestions for recruiting resources, inexpensive to free.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, do you want to talk face to face?
We'll wait on that one. There's always a delay with Zoom.
But yeah, just seeing
Um,
because like
yeah.
if he
And
has it live, like
Josh,
we can
let
go
us
I
back
can
and
talk
forth.
live, but I'm not on the camera.
No
So,
problem, Steve. Great. This will be perfect. This will give you a better answer. And Josh, same to you. Just a heads up.
good enough here or too much background noise?
You're
No,
perfect,
you're
Steve.
fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
Great.
What's
Thank
going
you.
on?
So, anyway, you and I talked, I don't know, a week or two ago, and my key area has always, but I'm the one that's got 25 years worth of experience, but basically first time striking out on my own.
Yeah.
So, and literally January 1. So I've almost of my career has been working in
Hmm.
manufacturing companies, engineering operations. I did a step with software, but that's not where I'm going.
I remember you now, Steve. You've been
Okay.
killing it for years, man.
Yeah, and so now that
Yeah.
I'm on my own, I've got to do all this stuff
Bless you.
myself. So yeah. So and you typically you've had other people that have, somebody else in the company is doing the research, or they're saying, okay, here's the resource we're going to be able to use. You've got this one, you've got that one. You can post, you can search, whatever the case is. And now I'm looking at wanting to do it on my own.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of where do you put that time and that resource
Yeah.
and how much of it is stuff that you just do the down and dirty, grind it out, find the people, contact them, just straight out email or pick up the phone and call them? Or are
Yeah.
there sites that are better, worse, that work, especially when you're talking engineering, you know, and manufacturing, because there is a big difference between looking for web developers
Hmm.
and looking for automation engineers or
Yeah,
robotics engineers.
100%. Are you talking more on the client side or on the candidate side?
I'm talking more about looking for the candidate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I found in engineering, I don't know, engineering, they live on LinkedIn and they live on Indeed. That's been my experience. Manufacturing, they tend to, in my experience, they tend to live on Indeed a little bit more. So Indeed has a resume database search tool that you can use, but I'm probably doing a blend of, I think we talked about this. There's a tool called Expandy, and it's an automation tool that sits on top of LinkedIn. So, if I'm kind of doing a shotgun approach to initially build out my network, then
Mhm.
I'm probably, using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, running the search, dropping people that I would want to connect with into a project,
Right.
and then running a cadence or a sequence on Expandy that'll send a connection request and like a follow-up message or two on the candidate side. And then on the Indeed side, I'm using Interseller. I'm running a resume database search, and then I'm grabbing the emails off of there and I'm dropping them into a sequence on Interseller that is going to
Yeah.
kind of automate the email outreach with, more likely than not, like a link, a Calendly link to my calendar so
Uh-huh.
that they can book a time.
Right.
And then anyone I talk to, I'm doing the typical referral thing, like who else do that type of approach. But I would say I think the Indeed resume database and LinkedIn are two good places to start. The
Hmm.
other the other option is like alumni, like school alumni. They'll have resume books and
Right.
they'll go back with a good amount of ways. You know what I mean? And then I'm curious, does anyone else work in that space that's on this call that
You're gonna listen to this guy.
who?
No, you're fine. Just letting you know.
Yeah, is there
Thanks, Aaron.
any yeah, thank you, Aaron. Is there anyone else that that has another resource for Steve, another good resource for candidates and generating a pool of candidates that I haven't already mentioned?
I mean, you could go on and search Facebook for groups or LinkedIn for groups. I've done that
Mhm.
when it's been a super niched role that I was like really struggling to fill. And I found that helpful. I've tested Craigslist, total bomb, stay away.
Mhm.
Um,
And I've
and
also
I've
done,
done job boards. Like I've done like the state job boards too.
oh, like GDOL,
Yeah.
ADOL, yeah. So you can get some
Yeah.
purchase with the state job boards. The other one that I forgot is sometimes Kate and I will have like a really hard search and we'll legit just use Google Maps and we'll search for businesses in that area. And we'll click on their staff and about us page. I mean, obviously get your VA to do that.
Right.
But when it's like just a really shallow talent pool, that's another thing that we've done.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Good
Okay.
question, Steve. That's
Yeah, let
awesome.
me get back into the chat. I'm going to mute you, Steve. Oh, thanks, Steve. Okay, Josh, you had a question. I have lost your question. So if you're comfortable unmuting yourself.
Oh, I know, Josh. Josh and I have
Yeah.
Yeah,
shared
no
videos
problem.
Oh,
back and
perfect.
forth,
Thanks, Josh. I
Hey,
will
guys.
find the chat again. Found it, guys. I've
Yeah, and
relocated.
Josh is super good on the tech side, man. He and I've sent videos back and forth, just like nerding out. And it's really solid, Josh. I've been impressed, man.
Oh yeah, you got recruitment.
Are you there, Josh?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah. What's going on?
So a quick question on the initial email outreaches. I'm trying to get a good idea.
Uh-oh. I'm
Point
having some tech
you're
issues.
seeing clients want solved. initial out based size, like company,
You know what you want to do, Kate? Just
100.
email the question.
No, I got his question. Hey, Josh, you're going in and out connection wise, so I'm going to mute you and I'm just going to read the question. If actually, I'm not going to mute you. If you want to chime in, totally. Josh asked, can you share some insights on what pain point solution and / solutions clients are looking for based on the size that we should be addressing in our own outreach? So really, like, how do we target those pain points in the outreach? And guys, remember, keep dropping your questions in the chat. This call is really driven by your questions.
Yeah, this is interesting. You know, I've looked at hiring copywriters. I've hired a few for the email outreach to be like, hey, let's dig in more to the copy and addressing pain points. I haven't seen it produce a better response rate. Like the simple job title and then just saying that you just rolled off a search that's similar. You know, I haven't had going deeper on the copy and addressing pain points produce better results. The only thing I've had produce better results is the podcast. Like it's just better than any copy, anything I've ever done. It's like, you know, 3x response rate, open rate, you know, win rate, close rate, just I mean across the board, there's really nothing even similar. So I would say, hey, if you're at the point, Josh, that you're like looking at your copy and you're trying, it's like just level up, just you know, hire someone off Fiverr to create a logo for the podcast niche that you be in, get that on your LinkedIn profile and start sending out copy about hosting people and featuring them on your podcast, and it's gonna 3x anything else you're doing, and any copy that you would write either, if that makes sense, because it's like, you know, you can major in the minors or, you know, minor in the majors, you know. So at this point I would say, you when you're going down that rabbit hole of addressing pain issues via copy, at this point just niche up to the podcast, and it's going to blow anything else you would ever do out of the water. I think we talked about that too, and you're doing a great job, man. Like your system is awesome, and you're going to be a natural for it. I think you'll crush it on that front, and I hope that helps.
Awesome. Does that answer it, Josh? If you want to unmute and let us know.
Yeah, that's really helpful. The only challenge I have is my initial outreach is I'm starting to get a lot of we're not using recruiters right now, or yeah, but that's pretty much like all different objections around we're not using recruiters or we're not open to new recruiters.
Yep.
When I know they are, but that's just what I'm getting.
Yeah. So like that's it's tough, man. Like part of it is like, is it them or is it me? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
is it them? Like, do they actually not have a need, or is it me? So, you know, the only thing I can do is really just increase my credibility in as many ways as possible and make sure that I'm, you know, looking as credible. And again, I would go back to the podcast thing, because, you know, when I send that, it's, you know, it's featuring someone, they're going to write me back, you know. At this point, we're not even really talking about their specific recruiting yet. But I don't know. I want either a 0.5 or a 1% positive response rate. So like if I've pulled 100 leads and I've dropped like, you know, 2 to 3 contacts for each lead into my sequence, whether, you know, like you're saying, you know, Expandy or Interseller, and I don't have one positive response, like at that point the market, it feels pretty saturated to me. So, you know, the options are invest in credibility indicators, you know, building out the, you know, the podcast, you know, testimonials, better looking website, investing more in the website, or it's testing other roles because it's just like too saturated. And I think it's up to you, man. Like if you look at your emails and you go, hey, you know, like the zip code matches, the city matches, the area code on the phone number matches, I've got my photo in there, like it seems pretty straightforward, and just everyone's saying that we don't use recruiters, then, you know, at that point I'm probably testing either some other cities or some other niches to see. The other thing is I think I've looked at your stuff. You might be served by adding a picture of you into the email. That really does help the response rate. But I remember looking at your emails and like they looked fine. So yeah, I think you should look at both and the podcast, and also looking at like expanding your niche in some way, targeting some different types of roles or different geography, and seeing if you get a better response rate. Because man, if you're just sending out that much, you're not getting anything. It's like you're gonna, even when you get a VA to do it, you're gonna burn so much cash. You know
For
what I mean?
sure.
If they work like, even if they work 40 hours a week at $3 an hour, it's like you're, and then they don't generate any leads because it's just so saturated. It's like you don't want to burn through your capital. That's a really good question though, Josh, for sure. And thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for asking.
And I just want to point out in the chat, Aaron has shared. Oh, go ahead, Josh. Okay. Aaron has shared a really good, cool Google, tool.
Just say thanks for the feedback.
Oh yeah, thanks, Josh.
Google custom search, and he dropped the link in there. So if anyone wants that, go ahead and grab that. Thanks, Aaron. iPad 7, don't know who you are, shares that Haley Marketing knows staffing, and they have several programs you can purchase. Feel free to elaborate on that a little bit more, like what specifically in marketing, just so everyone can know. And what kinds of other questions do you guys have? Like, we've definitely talked about tools to automate. We're a big fan of them. They make it a lot easier across the board. I love it on the candidate sourcing side personally. Super, super helpful.
I have a question.
Yeah, Aaron.
And sort of kind of group exchange. Cadences for both marketing and for recruiting, because I've done like the 10 before 10, and right now a project I'm working on is to actually solidify a cadence and an automation, or what would you call that? People, process, and technology, but a process. So sharing and exchanging ideas, hearing about cadence.
Yeah, tell me what it looks like for you right now, Aaron.
Yeah. Okay, so initially, it's obviously you identify the candidates. So initially what I do and how my ATS is set up is in a cadence, but it would be research on LinkedIn, or whether it be, I usually alert the candidate that I want to talk to. I actually can be a detective and find their information and add them on LinkedIn. And then what I would do after that is I would, instead of approaching them, I just say something like, I don't want to show up unannounced, so let me give you a phone call in a couple of days. So my call list ends up building each day. So the 10 before 10 is actually really has helped. But then at the same time too, there might be something a little bit better. Then it is after like 3 days, you contact them, you don't want to stalk them. So you let them know they probably are not going to answer in 2 days, as you suggested, but it gave it warm enough so that you could continue to contact them. Mm-hmm. So it's just things like that. It's like email is not like moot or anything obsolete, but it is just kind of like how people schedule it, because I don't like to be a stalker. And I also kind of am sensitive to actually how I would like it. Mm-hmm. So just some people like, I just find that very, very interesting, time. And like,
what the actual cadence is. What are you recruiting for? Like what types of roles? Because that
that's definitely a factor.
Yeah. Well, for the more active side, so I have a contract side of my desk and also a direct. And so on the contract side, it's mostly IT. That's pretty much like time sensitive in the sense that it's today. That's no problem. Engaging top talent that is on the direct side, I actually focus on construction and manufacturing. So contract is all IT, sometimes some engineering, but manufacturing, construction at the levels that are probably between 70 to 120,000 is the average. Mm-hmm. They can be anybody from project managers to, that's the average. A little bit interesting market lately, of course, but definitely not impossible. It's just how to work it differently. So it's more of a passive, well, like if you have a lot of active candidates that are looking for work, and it's not to say that they're not qualified, but they are not in work for different reasons. The majority is because that they are cut, and so right now you have to make sure that you are presenting the very, very, very top tier talent And those are typically, in my category, people who are passive, which is just fine. Everybody wants to hear about an opportunity, but it is that cadence so that you don't sound like you're dating, going into a club and you're a bad
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah. And I
Mhm.
appreciate that about you, and it's important. And it makes sense. Like you always want and this is interesting for this call too. Like, regardless of what advice or perspective I share, like, filter it through what's in alignment with you and how you operate in the world and like what your natural way of being is, because you always want your communication, your verbiage, your cadence to be in alignment with you. So I appreciate that about you. um I had another thought that I was going to share with you. I'm really sensitive to cadence. So I do a lot of my outreach right now is to CROs and like one
Mhm.
step below CRO, like SVP or VP of sales. And even when I'm reaching out, about my podcast and what have you, like, they might get a form of communication from me like once every 17 days or 23 days or 34. Like I spread it out. Like it's definitely,
It's also
you
that
know,
focus on long-term relationship there.
yeah,
Right,
Like it's
right.
I'm
not,
playing the long game. So like for
yeah.
me,
Exactly.
I have sequences that are, they're 10 touch points in an
Mhm.
entire year. So, well, yeah, I definitely feel you on the cadence. Is is your goal here to find good passive candidates to then turn around and do MPC or most placeable candidate marketing to clients? Is that the goal of what you're doing, or is there a different goal?
I think that right now, well, so it's also the cadence on marketing. And like I said, sometimes that analogy of going into your motivation at 7 p.m. when you're on a date is different than your motivation at 2 a.m. And
Correct.
so it's trying to, that's why the 10 before 10 thing. But see, the marketing cadence is like if you're presenting an NPC, you are, yeah, I mean, I have it. It's kind of like case by case, how you feel, and obviously
Hmm.
we're right, Kate, about the relationship part of it.
Mhm.
But when we are talking about that 1% you had mentioned something a little while ago about that 1% response. And
Yeah.
sometimes I get a little bit hesitant about blasting, and I don't think I understood it as blasting, you know, uh, but I wanted to have more effect in a passive situation. But when you're also marketing an NPC, I'm not a pimp, I'm not going to
Yeah.
sit there and pimp them out. Uh, but so there was just a curiosity question on both sides, Caden.
Yeah. Like the
Yeah.
1% thing is just on the client side. And that is just like the most basic level of continuous outreach. At the same time, so I'll talk about the client side first, and then I'm probably going to ask you a
Sure, sure,
clarifying
sure.
question, Aaron. So um, on the client side, that's continuous, that's kind of runs in the background. So every 2 weeks, VA goes in, pulls the jobs, screens through the leads, finds the right contacts, drops them into sequences. The software is set up to tell me if there's a duplicate,
Mhm.
meaning if that person has already been reached out to before.
Okay.
And then they're going to be put in a different outreach. And if they're high up enough, they're going to get individual messaging from me. So like, each week I'll go in and I'll look at the duplicates, and it could be someone that I've already sent emails to, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or it could be someone that's gotten a lot of emails. So I'll kind of make a decision of like, there's a couple sequences that I have that, kind of acknowledge the fact that I've been reaching out before, you know what I mean? And then there's some, so it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so that's already built into that. Like I'm not gonna have someone just get blasted by like 12 you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
would burn my name in the market. So Interseller or really any of the other kind of email automation tools will have a duplication effect. And then you can decide, you can create a new sequence for those types, being like, hey, Aaron, I know I've reached out to you a few times before about this, pinging you about this. Or you can send individual messages, which, for me, the outreach that I'm doing to the SVP and CRO, a lot of that's individual. And like I was, emailing our VA this week being like, hey, they accidentally sent a message to CRO, and I'm like, hey, C-suite, like, don't touch, like,
Mhm.
just note that it's open, like, let me, be very personalized in my outreach to these. I don't want them getting automated. At the lower level, at the manager or director, I'm not that worried about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a curiosity, and I don't mean to bogart all of the time, but that was just
No,
a
a lot of people will learn just by hearing this exchange.
For sure. It's so valuable. And it's so funny because like Steve has dropped an answer, and so I'm just going to read it in the chat. Engineering candidates he's found answer best on Fridays or weekends. Engineering managers more on weekends or Tuesday. Marketing to client managers and above seem to react to early mornings and weekend for first contact. What I've also found from my own is really like I like to come in like right after lunch. I love a good email to a higher up right after lunch. I find that they are kind of chilled out, and that's a good time. And I personally steer clear of emails on Mondays on the client side. I just don't like that day. I think they got a lot
It
of
never
things
works. My
they're
response
covering.
rate or heat
It's
map
like,
is just it's trash on Monday.
yeah. So I'd steer clear of Mondays.
yeah. Sometimes I do Sunday nights
Yep.
so that my email is the first one in the inbox. Well, at the top of the inbox. But yeah, no,
Correct.
this is very, very interesting. I really appreciate the exchange.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love a Tuesday afternoon. I feel like I get a
the
lot of response on that one.
That's
the
cool.
window
Fridays
I
too.
do, yeah, the window I do is like 1 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Mhm.
And most of my communication goes out 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. I skip Monday, and that's
Yeah,
Tuesday,
agreed.
Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday I cut it short. I do like 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And I've thought about turning it on for Sunday night. Sunday night's been really good. Kind of depends on how your process works. What was your? Because I'm just interested, Aaron. What was your question on the candidate side? Because it seems like you're just like, hey, I just don't want to overwhelm them. Like I want to be mindful of how much they're getting from me communication wise.
Sure, sure. In the history, sometimes, I always kind of go after the whole referral-based recruiting and referral-based marketing,
Mm,
so those two, try to keep it referral-based. Yes, I have used resources, such as I do use LinkedIn and make sure that I'm connected with everybody. And then, like I said, that cadence part, somebody has obviously done this probably a lot longer than I have. But on the candidate side, I have done things where the sense of urgency was so much because in a contingent situation, we are
Mhm.
competing probably.
You gotta
We
move.
don't know
You
how
gotta
many
move, or that deal can fall through so fast.
you have to be on it. And
I
so
do
when you're
daily when I'm like that, and I will hit them on multiple platforms. And you know what? I'm
mhm.
yeah,
okay. I jokingly say when I get on the phone with them, "Hi, I'm that person who's been stalking you on LinkedIn." And like I always find people in laughs. It's like become my like line, but it's like I feel like recruiting
yeah,
and stalking are very similar.
no, that's it, totally it. And so on the candidate side, sometimes when the sense of urgency is it's how you craft the message too. But I would blitz my whole ATS. I'm gonna have 75,000 people in my ATS at present, and I can run a search string within my ATS, and I'll just blast it out. But the thing is, I worry about is the response back to all of the candidates. So I have to craft it in such a way that it's like a talent bulletin or a thing. So I hesitate. Again, there's a lot of trepidation about doing some of these things. And when you said that the other day about the 1%, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that because I don't have the on the candidate side, just to answer your question, is I have been given referrals, and I also have kind of like a lucrative referral reward program, where I offer $500 for a lead that leads me to a placement, and a gift card or however. So I had to get creative so I would get very good leads. But then you're responding back to all of these blitzes. So the blitz part can backfire on me. I haven't done it for a while. There was one time when I had to. I just thought, oh my gosh, there are like 6 other agencies doing this. I know I have gold mine sitting in here. And in a
Mhm.
contingent situation, it's just like, however, um, on the contract side, that one's very, very easy. And so when you guys had spoken about the contingent side of the business, I totally get that. It's just how to two different things. Anyway, that's like a fire hose right there. So forgive me.
No, that's
We're
fine.
here
I
to
mean, you
solve things, chat things out. We know that there's a lot of wisdom here on this call too.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you want to
Or
be
they-
mindful, like your email marketing and stuff. Like you just, and even Kate and I, we've emailed you guys probably a little bit too much. You know what I mean? So like you want to
Mhm.
be,
I'm a
but
big fan of
we're
reminders. Can't help it.
well,
I'm the kind of
there's
person
also
who sometimes
urgency.
thinks, yeah, I mean, yeah, like if we're gonna do something like this, but I
I
love
really do.
reminders.
I
But
love that.
everybody's different, and we're not everybody. Like I was just on a call yesterday with a new client, and she was like, I don't like your reminders, and I'm like, you are the first person. I have so many people thank me, but who knows?
Oh, I
Like
love it.
to each his own. So
I took your idea from that. I think that is a really, really neat. I'd rather err on the side of 99% and have that.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rick has a recommendation for you, Aaron. And everybody on the call too. He says, I send out a lot of emails to managers around 11 p.m. I also call early in the morning around 7 a.m. or after 6 p.m. basically because their admin is gone and they are at their desk after meetings. That's actually true. Back when I used to do cold calling, and I no longer do cold calling, which is my favorite. But I would call late and I would often go straight through and a CEO would pick up their phone call. I think they were just kind of like, and then I got to pitch them, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, you also really got to like that. Like I do.
I
and
don't,
have tons
so
of
I
respect
stopped.
for Rick. I talked to Rick this week. He's awesome. Stud, because like at 7 a.m. the last thing I want to do is talk on the telephone. You know what I mean?
I'm
So, like,
generally not ready till 10 a.m. So I'm like, I don't have my voice. We have another question. Do you guys also use your VA to find and reach out to candidates when you have a search? And I'm sorry, Aaron, did I just cut you off? I just realized that. Was there?
Oh,
Yeah.
No. Somebody had to come in the room and I didn't want to.
Oh, okay. Phew. Do you feel like we answered stuff for you there?
Yeah, what I really love about it is kind of like the mastermind concept of exchanging information. I've already received and heard stuff, so I've gained probably quite a bit. I'm a sponge, so
Cool.
in the last 15 minutes, yeah, awesome. Keep throwing it at me.
All right.
yeah,
Cool.
and thanks,
Yeah.
Aaron. So yeah, I forget who I was talking to about this week, but like there's
the
levels
VA.
to the game of VAs, right? So like, usually when I'm starting someone, a recruiter that's like, hey, I'm gonna launch on my own, I'm doing very basic VAs, right? So I'm doing, peeps in the Philippines, $3.50 an hour, to go through the leads, screen the leads, find the right contacts, drop them into outreach sequences, on the client and the candidate side. But there's a ceiling to that. Like even when you have someone that has really good English, it's just really interesting. There's this, like, everyone on this call kind of understands corporate America and like how the hierarchy works. That's like very in the ether. That's very like culture driven. And it's actually really hard when you get to more complicated orgs or more complicated roles to teach someone in a different country, how to kind of reverse engineer what the org chart would look like, for corporate America companies. So, I would say lower level roles, they can do it no problem. Once you get above like 500 employee organizations, and once you get to, the higher level roles, it just breaks down. Like at that point, honestly, interns are the best way to go. Interns or a US based VA, but that's going to run you, $10 to $15 an hour. Eventually it changes to the model that we all know, which is executive recruiting, where you have an executive recruiter, which is a pretty expensive recruiter, but it's like that's what's necessary to really close those deals. So, normally with lower level roles, you can stretch the Filipino VAs and you can get a lot of good work done. But then there's a ceiling to it. And at that point, it's project based with either an intern or US worker, 10 to 15. And then, you get to a point where, Kate does recruiting for me, right? So like you get to a point where you're like, you just need another intelligent adult in the US.
Intelligent. Thank you. How
Yeah,
nice. I love that you think I'm smart.
to run it.
For
Yeah.
those that don't know, Todd and I are siblings, so we like to keep
Yeah.
that rivalry going.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, been trying to get rid of her for years, dude, and just have not
I
been
definitely got here
successful.
first. So
Yeah, you
rather
did.
than having it be a family therapy session, y'all definitely keep the questions going. We're going to be on here for um, at least 20 minutes if we've got
Yeah,
good
and then I've got a hard
questions.
stop at 4K because I've
Yep,
got
same. I have
podcast
calls.
interviews.
I am slammed with a search right now, which is good. Love it.
We're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah, other
next.
questions.
Haha, yes, Rick, I should get it right.
I have another question. I have
I
another
pay.
question.
She does perfectly fine, Rick. Seriously,
Just swimming
love it,
in
love
Scrooge
it.
McDuck style.
Yeah, yeah. But that's my after 7 years of running it in different VAs. It's like that's yeah. That's kind of what you get to. And then another. This is an interesting one that I did. This was pre-COVID. It'll come back online, but I did a lot of handwritten letters for my outreach. So I would do a template and then a cadence of 3. And then I hired someone over in the Philippines to do all the handwritten letters because it would just take me so long. So that's another really good way to make it like very personalized outreach. The response rate on that is really good.
Mhm. Yeah, kind of like not a super great one right now because so many people aren't in
Correct.
offices or different areas
Yep.
have different rules.
I
Like,
feel like that'll come back online.
yeah, because like
end of
you're in Atlanta, things are more open, but I'm out in like San Diego and we literally just had a stay-at-home order lifted.
Yep.
So
No.
kind of crazy times.
Yep. Yep. But that's another really effective one. But yeah, that's my take on VAs and where they top out at.
Yeah. Olivia asked, would you recommend Indeed.com for resume search? If not, can you please suggest a good tool to use? Olivia, what niche are you in? And yeah, for sure, I use that. Todd and I both do. Depends, especially for like manufacturing roles, getting really in there. A lot of those, if your candidates aren't living on LinkedIn, you really want to get in and look at Indeed for sure.
hmm
Yeah,
Yep. 100%.
yeah. I hope that
And then
answers that.
the
Should,
the Department of Labor works too.
Yeah. She said supply chain professional solutions is the.
I feel like all those are going to live on LinkedIn. Like you can do, it depends in a rural area. So I've done some like supply chain, like purchasing, buyer agent, in the manufacturing space. And so sometimes in the rural area, they do not live on LinkedIn. And so the Indeed resume database search is the right call. But in any metropolitan or within, I would say about 100 miles or 75 miles of metropolitan, LinkedIn should work for you. And then honestly, it's like if they're not living on those two, it's very hard to find. That's the one where you would use kind of Aaron's approach of doing referrals, asking, hey, do you know anyone else? And like building out your database, that way. Because you got to think people used to recruit with like just a phone book. So it's definitely doable.
I know. Can you imagine that going back? It looks like Olivia had the answer. So if anyone else has questions, drop them in. We definitely want to be cognizant of that. Obviously, Todd and I have hard stops, and we really only told you guys to plan an hour. Is there anything else like really looking at? I mean, so we kind of went into VAs, we went into where to find candidates, we went into the cadence, we went into marketing. Is there anything around scaling that you want to share, Todd?
Such a broad
I know.
question,
Sorry. Let
Kate.
me niche it
It's
down.
like like each person has their own individual, like what they're trying to create in their life and like what the result is that they're going for. Because like for some people they want to scale a big company, and for other ones, they want to, make more money with less time involved.
I think that's where automation tools come in super handy.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
and the
you can go
VAs.
back and forth on the cold calling. That's why I'm not a fan of cold calling. Like, my time is best served talking to number one clients that want help with recruiting, and then number two, candidates that are looking. It's like every other task I just want to get off my plate as much as possible, including talking to people that don't want to talk to me. It's like, I'd rather build out a marketing engine on the front end so that.
It's so much nicer when they call you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Mhm.
sure we've all had that experience on this call where like we're called and they want to work with us. Like that is such a great feeling. And obviously referrals are like that too. That's always so great too. Like they're already enrolled, they got a great recommendation. But I mean, that's for sure why I'm not a big fan of cold calling, because it's like I'm just a total stranger. And I want to build, I really like to build relationships. I mean, that's to me, that's like so much of what this is about.
Mhm. Yeah, also, pitching retain gets a lot easier when you've got a marketing funnel built on the front end. Like they've seen you
Yeah.
enough and they know that you're branded in that space, and I can get them to put down a retainer.
And
Not
when you're
all.
slammed, when you're literally slammed, you've got to pitch retain because it's just not, I mean, you don't have the time. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to move on that contingent search the way they want you to. That really allows them to prioritize. It allows you to prioritize, which is super important because
I'm not sure.
urgency is so key here.
What's up, Rick?
I'm not sure if this was on topic, but I think in lieu of cold calling, I think you do this as well, Todd. But that's what we talked about was most placeable candidate calls, so to speak.
Mhm.
Take a start. Great candidate to market. Then most agencies don't function that way. They got 26 steps in 6 months to develop a client, which is I don't have that much time.
Yeah.
So that so that
Yeah, the
kind of takes
phone.
away a cold call approach. You're actually calling in with something that you think they could use or should be able to use versus what I call a promotion call. Hey, I'm been in the business so long and got a great recruiting process and we're really great. You're taking something, a product that really that they hopefully they can use to solve a problem.
Yeah, and I would say the energy
Yeah.
there is like give versus take, you know what I mean? Like the promotion calls to me feel like a take, and the NPC calls to me feel like a give.
Right.
Feels like I'm
Mhm.
showing up with some value at the table. Um, and also like you're good on the phone. You know what I mean, Rick? It's like
Right.
some people when they start like they're not, and so I need to be mindful of, not everyone is like, boiler room, Wolf of Wall Street style, like coming in like locked and loaded and ready to go.
Right. But I also think you got to do the other marketing that you talked about, the branding. I mean, so that when you do call and you
Hmm.
catch them on the phone, hopefully they've already seen your name, seen your
Yep.
company name somehow. So that's this other stuff you talked about. The automated stuff is very important because all that kind of culminates together to make a winning call, I guess you could
Yeah, it's
say.
really nice when it runs in the background and like your task, for the week, whoever you're gonna call, like they've already gotten, a couple, messages, from you, maybe like a LinkedIn thing and something else.
Mhm.
Like it just makes it all so much easier.
And the other thing I would say too is that what I did a couple of things here, since we're in football country, SEC, I used to always look where a lot of my managers went to school.
Hmm.
Mm.
And now on on a Monday, I would, see, somebody went to Auburn and I may know them well, I may not know them too well. I said, hey, that was a heck of a win
Mm.
on Saturday
Yeah,
against,
finding that
you're just trying to,
connection piece. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of,
Yeah.
it's something more personable and they know that you've done some research, so to speak. And then, um, that's just one way just to kind of do something different than just, hey, let's talk business. Here I'm
Hmm.
kind of talking, something, and hopefully and then you'll find somebody else that's maybe more NFL oriented. So whatever you try to find out what some of their likes in life are. And there was another point I was going to make as well that just slipped my mind that has been very helpful.
On the outreach side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that one's
gosh.
solid. I
Mhm.
haven't done that in a while, the alumni one. That's smart.
Yes,
Oh,
well,
check your
especially here,
chat.
football country, so, but there's another one it'll come back.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes
when
you
you when
forget
you
so much.
when you think of it, Rich,
Yeah.
definitely let me
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And thank you. And that's awesome advice. Like anyone who's listening to that, like take note. Like that's a great way to personalize your outreach and get some traction. I want to try to get a couple more questions, and I'm gonna, say people's names and see if they have any questions before we get off. I also want to say, obviously I teach this. So, anyone that is looking to launch or looking to pivot that wants to have a conversation about, their goals and their business and what they're trying to do, grab a time. I'm looking at my calendar. I've got a little bit of time tomorrow, and then I got some time Thursday and Friday. So Kate, I'll have Kate send out a Calendly link. And so anyone that wants to, because this is kind of one to many, and each of you has your own
Right, kind of
goals,
talking
what you're
about
trying to
like that
build.
niche,
Yeah.
like that, how specific, if you want to scale, that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyone that wants to launch and have a conversation, feel free to grab a time on my calendar. The other thing. So who else has a question? Mark, Diane, Terry, Alvarez, Mike, Stephanie, Ron, Carrie. Do you guys have anything as we're kind of wrapping this up? Do you guys have any questions or anything that we can answer for you about your specific situation and what you're trying to do? Cattle prodding you all slowly into action.
I remember back in, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I did recall that the last comment was that if you've got a list of clients that you're trying to really focus on, put a search engine out there for news. And if something comes up, they did something great, or they merged, or something happened at that company, forward the article to them and say, hey, this is great news, nice job, or great award your company won, or show them that you're following them, you're paying attention. So anything that pops up about the company that's positive, just use that, and they know you're paying attention, and you're wanting their business. You're not just
Yep, you're not just spraying and praying. You're literally like straight up invested.
Rick, number one, thank you for sharing, and that's awesome. You reminded me that because a lot of people don't use this function, but in LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, you can search a group of people, and you can filter by anyone that's posted in the last 30 days, and you can scroll through and see what they posted, and then either reach out around that topic, or comment, or whatever you want. So I know when I was doing outreach, I pivoted Kate and I to manufacturing, just because my core niche was just struggle bus, probably end of Q1. I mean, for literally every recruiter, but and so I would go through and I would look to see if they posted anything about jobs, or, what I mean? And I would do outreach. But yeah, that's another really good function, is kind of the news and feed activity function in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Just even the cheap version has it, where you can run a search and filter by who's posted in the last 30 days and then see their posts and reach out accordingly. And then Josh actually was showing me that there's a similar function in Expandy, which is that tool that sits on top, where it'll pull postings from the people, and then you can go in and start commenting on it. I haven't looked at that, Josh. I watched your video last night. You've got so many podcasts, and I'm in the middle of a search right now, but
it's actually pretty cool. So what you can do to harvest leads. Oh, I think I'm breaking up.
Yeah, keep going.
You guys hear me?
Yeah,
keep
you're
going.
Oh
good.
yeah, so in Expandy, for those of you who don't know about it, so you can grab leads based on a post on someone. So for example, I found a LinkedIn post from a data engineer from, I think it was Netflix, and had a ton of engagement, hundreds of people liking and commenting on his post. And so I put that URL into the system, and it pulled every person who either liked the post or commented on it. And then you can filter on who liked it, who did the curious, who did the empathy. And then you can customize your messaging campaign from there. So you can say something specific to, like, hey, I saw your post on Mark blah, blah, blah's post. I love the comment you made about, insert custom snippet. And then, or saw that you liked this post, or I saw that you gave it a heart, or whatever it is. And then just go from there, and then just create the drip campaigns. So that's another good way.
That's an awesome one. I'm so glad that came in crystal clear, Josh. Like, such a great share, and like, thank goodness your line wasn't breaking up for that.
Yeah, the one time.
I know, whatever. I don't like. I always think like, who cares how things happen? Like, isn't it perfect that we get it like when we need it? You know what I mean? Like, such a good share.
Yeah, that one's solid. I'm gonna look at that again and play with that this weekend. It's just this week we just got a bunch of searches and podcasts. But yeah,
I missed some of that. I missed some of those details. What was that? Was that Expandy?
Expandy.
Expandi.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
EXPANDI.
Yeah, and he was
Right.
really talking about matching it with like LinkedIn and like how to really
Okay.
like use it together for outreach.
Mhm.
There is going to
Yeah.
be a replay of this. So if you want to go back, that was probably at like the somewhere between the like
That's fine. Yeah.
52-minute mark right in there.
Cool.
Yeah. Uh, so I'm going to drop the link to book a call with Todd. Feel free to hop on, connect. It is so much easier to get in there and really solve things when you're talking one-on-one. So that's my invitation to you guys. If you're I always think this is really interesting. My experience, I came out of therapy. So my experience is a lot of times we don't ask questions. We hold ourselves back. We feel embarrassed. And one of the biggest things I learned as a result of stepping into leadership trainings is speak up. Like everybody's voice really matters. Your question will always benefit somebody else. Your question will drive the content Todd and I create too. Our goal here is to serve you, to have this be valuable. So that's just my invitation, like thinking of it that way. I kind of
Yeah.
petered out at the end, but
No, that's solid. And that's, yeah. So, again, Mark, Diane, Alvarez, Ron, Stephanie, Terry, Carrie, Olivia. If you guys have any other questions, pop them in the chat. And let me know, what we can answer for you or what we can do to help you guys move forward in a meaningful way.
yeah. Or if you're not comfortable with that, grab a spot on Todd's calendar and talk directly with him. I would open my calendar up, but there's literally no room. So I'd prefer not to work until 8 p.m. tonight.
And I'll do a share since we have a little bit of time. So, my podcast is now booked out all the way through March. So I'm booked out for 8 weeks, which is awesome. And I am starting to get the CROs and VPs reaching back out to me about filling roles, which sets me up to pitch retained. So, there was definitely a dip in my biz, during COVID, and I transitioned us to manufacturing in the short term or in the interim, if you will. And it's starting to pick back up on the sales and marketing side. So we're starting to get roles there. I'm starting to get, replies back. I'm starting to get, CROs and VPs asking me, if I can fill this, which it sets me up to do retain. So I'm very proud of myself and the work that got put in and the fact that and I'm just going to humble brag now because no one's asking any questions. So that's what you get. So, 8 weeks of, the podcast being booked out as far as biz dev goes, it's like, it's so powerful. It's definitely the next level of the game. I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah, it's a huge way to scale. It truly is. And that made me think of so this was interesting. Like we had mentors have their businesses closed. And like, I think that, with the not to go COVID, but I'm going to for a moment with the vaccine out, like, I think there's a lot of hope on the horizon. I think businesses are picking up. So if you're wondering, is this my time? Like, yes, go for it.
Mhm.
Like if you're ready to be on your own, like I know, like if you like, I know Todd, for you, checks used to roll in and you used to feel like, why can't I see more of this? And like the truth is you can. So I know a lot of you folks are already running your own. If you're not though, and you're wondering, it is a good time. Things are moving. And of course they are. Like we always get to tune in and say what's happening on the world at large. Is everything shut down or is it putting back up?
I would not have said that in August, September, October, November. Like I would have been like, dude, just lie low.
Just hold still, hold steady. You got a job, you got a check coming in, hang tight.
Yep.
Yeah. But
now I feel very clear that it's like you get to start developing and getting your outreach and your marketing going and get positioned well and start getting traction and momentum, February, March, April, and then by summertime, like you're off to the races,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's traction happening again.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I think that your podcast thing is great, but I think it might not have been as successful if we didn't have COVID potentially. Everybody's now more used to doing video related, conversations, meetings and stuff. So what's a podcast, right? So and before they may not have been so receptive.
Yeah.
There's so I think
and look,
there's some positive from that.
Yeah, yeah, and we talked about it too, where it's like there wouldn't have been a podcast if it wasn't for COVID. You know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah, we never would have had to go back to the drawing board and look at what do we get to create and how can we, what's possible. And like, that's one of the biggest things, you guys. There is this, when you are somebody that is always looking at like, how can I turn this into something? How does this, like, if you get stuck in like, this sucks, this is a struggle, there's no hope, you're never going to have the mindset. Todd and I talk about this all the time. Like, mindset is everything. Like, you've got to have your head on right, because if you're looking at what's not working to figure out a solution, you want to move into solutions there. You want to be telling yourself there's a solution here. This is my time. I'm going to go for it. The things that you say will become the things that you live. You really want to start to think about that.
Yeah, that's a good share, Kate. Yeah, I definitely moped around for like 2 weeks.
I'm not saying don't feel your feels. Feel your feels. Have your reaction. Put a timer on that.
Yep. And then I was like, okay, that's long enough. Like, what am I going to do now? Like, I can't just be a willow in the wind and a victim to it. So then I'm like, okay, what can I do? And I think I was talking to Rick about it this week, where it was like, yeah, like I always said I was going to do it, and it's like, well, either I'm full of shit or I'm actually going to do it, And then when COVID hit, I was like, well, if you're ever going to do it, now's the time.
Yeah. I would say turning obstacles into opportunities. Like, you really want to start to master that mindset. Doesn't mean you're not going to have your like initial reaction, or like, I mean, none of us like it when we lose a search or something goes wrong. Like, of course not. It's totally disappointing. Feel that, but then move forward. Like, and it's resiliency, grit, those words. Super important. Guys, I'm going to drop the link to book a call with Todd if you want solutions, if you want problem solved, if you want to figure out what's your next best step. That's definitely what this is about. So I'm just going to drop it in there one more time. It was a total pleasure getting to connect with each and every one of you. We hope that you guys found this valuable.
Yeah, thank you to all of you for showing up, making time, sharing. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Josh. Everyone else. Also, thank you for showing up. And I just appreciate it. And I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah. All right.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah, go ahead,
of
Aaron.
course.
When y'all talk about mental, attitude on, which is so critical in anything you do. But I just got finished watching a 5-day Tony Robbins thing. But you can watch it, get it on YouTube. Just put day 1 with Tony Robbins, day 2 with Tony Robbins, if you're into that type of stuff.
Oh, I love it, dude. I love
same.
it.
So funny, Rick. I was just picking up books to sort through, and I literally was like, let me put this one back on the shelf. Like, I'm keeping this Tony Robbins book.
But YouTube, it's on YouTube. They got them recorded, and you just finished like yesterday. So
for sure.
So that's just something to throw out just for your mental growth and mental well-being.
Yeah.
So
anyway, thanks for the share, Rick. I'll talk to you guys soon. Love y'all. Got it.
Bye, guys.
Peace, y'all.